All right, today's video is intended to go along with the downloadable 5-axis ROI or return on investment worksheet that we have on our website. So we have a lot of people come into our booths and so forth at trade shows and open houses, and we tell them, have you seen our new 5-axis machine? And they'll say, oh, I don't do that kind of work. Well, in reality, they're doing simple 3-axis work on multiple sides of the same part. So in essence, they're doing 5-sided machining. They're just doing it manually on a 3-axis machine. They're flipping through the different operations. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to take a very simple part that has multiple operations to it, do it both on a 3-axis machine and then on a 5-axis machine, and see what kind of savings we can get both in time, and then put some money value to that for the monetary part of it, or the business case, if you will. So what we did is we took a very simple part. It's just got some simple geometries on multiple sides of it. We've got a couple of, it's kind of a doghouse shaped part. We've got a couple of angles cut on the front and the back. They're different angles, some pocketing, a couple of bores and things like that. Very simple work, but we did it both in the 3-axis machine and then in the 5-axis. And then we took a look at the numbers that were associated with each so we could see what kind of savings we got on the 5-axis machine. So first we put it in a standard 6-inch vise on a 3-axis machine. We flipped it through all the different operations, and we had a total of 7 operations to complete this part, to do the top, the fronts, each one of the angles, both ends, and so forth. And you'll see that our total setup time for programming and setup was 5.5 hours. And that included building a fixture to hold the part on those 2 angles, the one on the front and on the back. And we had about 19 minutes and 47 seconds of total combined cycle time to run this entire part. So with that as our benchmark, we then went ahead and put it on a 5-axis machine, bolted it directly to the table, and completed the part in one setup. The first operation we had here was to drill and counterbore the 2 holes that are mounting it to the table. So we do have that as an operation. We did that obviously before we mounted the part to the machine. And then we were able to complete the entire part from that setup in one more operation. Our total setup time was 3.5 hours, or I'm sorry, was 1.5 hours. And our cycle time was the 11 minutes and 44 seconds plus whatever time it took us to complete the first operation to mount it. So if you look at our total savings for this job overall, so if this was a job that we were already running and we were making money on, we can now look at see what kind of savings we would get in time by switching to a 5-axis machine or a 5-sided setup. So we lost 4 hours of setup time because we had 30 minutes for the first operation and only 1 hour setup and programming to complete the part. And we had a savings of almost 7 minutes in overall cycle time. Now that is attributed to positioning, tool changes, rapids between tool changes, and things like that. We were a little surprised by that, but what we've seen over the last several years is you can look at about an average of 20% of a cycle time reduction just by going to a 5-sided type setup for this very reason. Obviously, the more setups you have, the more operations that you have in a 3-axis environment, the more of this savings you're going to see by going to that one setup, one and done type of an operation. So with that 4 hours of setup time, the reduction in load and cycle time, let's take a look at that and let's put some value to that so we can kind of see what this means to us in our pocketbook. So we took an arbitrary shop rate of $80 an hour, and we looked at that 4 hours of setup time that we reduced this setup or this job by. And at $80 an hour, 4 hours is $320. Let's assume that this was a 100-piece job. So we can break that down to a savings per part of $3.20 based on that $320 of setup time amortized over the entire 100-piece run. So that's $3.20 per part there. And then we can look at the load and cycle time. if we go out onto the internet and we take that total of 8 minutes and 23 seconds, we can get what we call a time decimal for that. And it turns out to be 0.1397. You can just Google that and find the decimal equivalent of that minutes and seconds. And we took that times our shop rate, and that gave us a savings per part of $11.18 based on load and cycle time. Now, if we take those two numbers and add them together, that comes up to $14.38, and that is per part of savings that we see, or a better cost that we see on this particular part. And again, if this is a job we were already running, that could be money that was going directly into our pocket. If this is the job that we're going to quote, then obviously we would be a little more competitive with our cost. Well, let's see what that means on the return on investment. So if we take that 100 parts times the $14.38, we would have a savings, if you will, on this job of $1,438 for this 100-piece run. And if we took that times 52 weeks, that would be a total of $74,776 of return on this particular job only. So if you take that and look at the fact that you could do this on every job that you're doing through a 3-axis machine, you're flipping that part multiple times, you're handling it, this kind of gives you an idea of what kind of money we're wasting by, or inefficiency we have, I guess, for just flipping that part manually versus putting it in a 5-axis machine and doing it in 1, maybe 2 setups. So if we look at an average cost of a 5-axis machine, let's say that machine was going to be $150,000, $160,000 to purchase a 5-axis machine, then you can see that in a year, about 2 years, a little over 2 years time frame, we would have been able to recoup on this one job only enough money to cover that cost for that 5-axis machine. And again, if we can take that times the number of jobs we have on our shop that we could utilize this new technology, then we can see that a 5-axis machine, even in what we would consider a 3-axis shop, the return on investment is pretty quick.